Who does the White Worm really work for? And who was that literal child who killed a man with a broadsword? House of the Dragon gets even soapier in Episode 4. Here's what you missed in all that lather. In Episode 3, King Viserys tried to make amends by telling his daughter to choose a husband who makes her happy. Episode 4 starts with the end of the tour he's arranged to introduce her to more suitors. Rhaenyra isn't interested. She dreamily fiddles with the necklace Daemon gave her and sits cozily next to Sir Criston. But around a dozen candidates line up to state their cases, the first of whom is an old man, Lord Dondarrion. The Dondarrions are loyal to the Baratheons, which might be why Bormund Baratheon admonishes Rhaenyra for making a joke about her suitor's advanced age.
That was unseemly, Princess.
Next is a boy from House Blackwood. He touts his ancient bloodline and promises that, with him, her days will be easy and her nights will be safe. Rhaenyra likes the boy's bravado, but she's not going to marry him. An unnamed knight from rival House Bracken taunts young Blackwood and calls him craven, which compels the proud tween to slay his heckler by cutting him open and spilling his guts. The source material, George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood, alludes to a Samwell Blackwood, who lost to a Bracken in a duel for Rhaenyra's hand. So this scene appears to be the show's dramatic reinterpretation of the Blackwood/Bracken duel, with this Blackwood, named Willem per HBO, killing his rival, unlike his literary counterpart. It's a scene that's ripped straight from the book. Daemon returns to King's Landing wearing a crown and calling himself King of the Narrow Sea.
Add it to the chair.
But he offers up the crown to Viserys and swears fealty, marking the full circle of their first estrangement and reconciliation. These brothers have always had a close but complicated relationship, which comes to light during, what else, a feast the king throws in his prodigal brother's honor.
No. I will not revisit this debate. You were always mother's favorite.
The king's in a jolly mood, made jollier by wine, but there are decades worth of sibling rivalry in his reminiscing. He says that their mother, Princess Alyssa, had no regard for custom or traditional rules, and that he, Viserys, was no great warrior. In the source material, it's true that Alyssa favored Daemon and took him dragon riding with her from the time of his infancy. Like her granddaughter Rhaenyra, she was a hot-blooded and non-traditional woman who loved dragons, sometimes dressed in boys' clothing, and preferred swordplay and taverns to more ladylike endeavors. She would have been proud of the dragon rider and fighter that Daemon became. And it's very likely that Viserys feels self-conscious about the fact that he's a Targaryen without a dragon or real combat experience. However, in Fire and Blood, Princess Alyssa dies in childbirth, and both Viserys and Daemon would have been too young to remember much of their time with her. So their conversation is either a change from the book or the king's drunken rambling about a woman he barely remembers. Fire and Blood is an in-universe history text with multiple sources, including clergyman Septon Eustace and a 3-foot-tall court fool named Mushroom. The events of the 4th episode of House of the Dragon are a turning point in Fire and Blood, but when it comes to Rhaenyra and Daemon, the book's sources diverge. According to Septon Eustace, the princess had an enormous crush on her uncle and was easily seduced. When a guard caught them, Rhaenyra told the king she was in love with his brother and begged to marry him, which the king forbade as Daemon already had a wife. Mushroom's version of events is more depraved. He claimed Daemon took Rhaenyra to the pleasure houses and fooled around with her, but did not deflower her so that she could learn how to be good in bed for Sir Criston. House of the Dragon blends the two accounts. Daemon sneaks Rhaenyra out in page's clothing, as he does in the book, and he takes her to the Street of Silk. After their brief encounter in the brothel, Daemon runs away, and Rhaenyra uses her newfound carnal knowledge to bed her White Knight. But when Rhaenyra and Daemon are accused, they tell different stories. She assures Queen Alicent that her virtue is intact, at least when it comes to Daemon, while Daemon doesn't deny anything and tells his brother he wants to wed his niece. In keeping with the spirit of the book, Viserys tells his daughter that the truth of what occurred doesn't matter, only the perception, which is a shrewd way to read history, including the fictional history of Westeros. Otto Hightower enters the king's bedchamber at the crack of dawn with discomforting news. He tells Viserys that Rhaenyra was spied at the pleasure house with Daemon, and the two were coupling, as he puts it. Viserys finally has the sense to question Otto's motives and loyalty to the crown, but the Hand insists his source has yet to lead him astray. That source is the White Worm, who uses a boy spy and messenger to practice her trade. The White Worm is revealed to be Mysaria, When that same boy comes to her later with payment as she tends to a hungover Damon, she tells him she's gotten out of the skin trade since it could only take her so far. Does Damon know that she's actually gotten into the business of selling secrets? It's possible she's still on his side, since getting caught might have been Damon's plan all along. If he marries his niece Rhaenyra as he proposes once Viserys thinks he's defiled her, he'll be closer to the throne than he ever could be otherwise.
You Targaryens do have queer customs.
Viserys decides to move forward with Rhaenyra as his heir, and he decides to force her to move forward with a politically advantageous marriage to Laenor Velaryon. But it's not just the current divisions within the kingdom that worry the king. He puts stock in dreams, and none more so than Aegon's. Viserys holds the cat's paw dagger to a flame and tells his daughter that the dagger belonged to Aegon the Conqueror, saying that a pyromancer hid his song in the steel. Rhaenyra picks it up and reads the blade's inscription.
From my blood come the prince that was promised, and his will be the song of ice and fire.
Viserys has entrusted her with the knowledge of Aegon's dream. She knows that some threat lies in wait in the north, but he also means that it may be her responsibility to give birth to the prince that was promised, or to continue a family line from which that prince will come. Her father, the king, needs her not just to marry for peace in their own time, but to produce a strong Valyrian dragon-riding heir who could be the savior of the world. When the Maester leaves Rhaenyra the abortifacient tea, it's not just an implication that he's not sure whether to believe her. He wants to preserve her womb for the foretold prince.